that would change the realities that we have seen on the continent, but which is really decreasing, to my view, under your control. But this is what should be done. Thank you.
And I'll turn to President Museveni. You have vast experience as a leader, and also you have seen a lot of conflicts coming and going. You also have taken a lot of responsibility and paying quite a high price also in Uganda as the country in Africa that has received most refugees. 1.4 million people, refugees, are now based in Uganda, according to UNHCR. Mr. President, based on your experience and what you have seen, how can we in the future better avoid conflicts like we have seen in South Sudan, between Ethiopia, Eritrea, the unfolding and of the situation in Somalia, but also difficulties in DRC and etc. What can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen again in the future?
What can be done is to understand the causes of these conflicts. With war, generally, there are what we call just wars and unjust wars. Between 1952 and 1994, you could characterize some of the wars in Africa as just wars, because at that time, Africans were fighting for independence, and in some cases, they were fighting for democracy. In 1952, were the Mau Mau in Kenya against British colonialism. Then you had the wars in Southern Africa against the Portuguese colonialists, against Ian Smith, here in South Africa against the minority regime. So those were just wars. There was no way anybody could do anything about them, because the Africans were dealing with situations which were not solvable by peaceful methods. So those were just wars. But the wars which we are dealing with now are really unjust wars. They are wars which have no good reason. And they are caused by an ideological problem. The ideological problem of emphasizing identity at the expense of interests. Identity, either tribe or clan, like in Somalia, or religion, like in some of the places. So that's an ideological mistake, to emphasize a pseudo ideology. Because when you say, I am Christian, I am Muslim, so we fight because of that. Or like in the Middle East, Shia, Sunni, or like in some of the areas, tribes or race. These are false polarizations. They are polarizations based on wrong reasons. Because what does a modern person want? A modern person needs prosperity. You need to answer the question, where does prosperity come from? Does it come from belonging to the same religion? Does it come from belonging to the same tribe? Or does it come from selling my good or my service and I get income? and I look after my family. So if you say that prosperity comes from production and exchange of goods and services, then who can buy my products? Most of the time you will find that the one who can buy your products is actually not a member of your tribe. Because most of the time the tribes are producing similar products. So the one who can buy my product most likely is somebody from the other group, different from mine. So when you emphasize identity at the expense of interests, you are an enemy of society, you are an enemy of progress, you are a misfit, you are an enemy of progress. So when you talk about these wars, I don't normally people here talking about the ideological part. They just talk about war, as if they must be condemned because they are ideologically bankrupt. If it's not a just war, then it is a criminal war. It cannot be anything else. Now, but however, also you must avoid pessimism. In 1970, Africa was either in war or in potential war. The whole of Southern Africa was in war. The war in Mozambique, the war in Angola, the war in Namibia, the war against Ian Smith, the war in Biafra, Nigeria. But as you can see, now the whole of Southern Africa is peaceful. No more wars of decolonization, because what was causing those wars at that time was decolonization. So now where we're having wars are in the other belts where the problem is ideology, bankrupt ideology. Now finally, on the issue of, you asked the question about the Taliban and all that. These groups must be engaged ideologically, not just unprincipled negotiations because you have fought, you have failed to defeat them. Why did you start the war in the first place? What were you fighting for? It must be ideologically sorted out. What are the interests of society? The positive interests. And what do you represent? So that we do a serious ideological audit and we're able to have principled peace, not just patching up because you have failed to impose your will. Why did the war start in the first place? What were you fighting for? I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for also underlining the bankruptcy related to these ideologies. So one strategy when it comes to more ideological warfare, but you also mentioned tribal warfare, where the different tribes don't see that really they're in the same boat. So it
is also ideological. Yeah. They are both ideological, religion or identity.
It's very complex. But look, for example, at your neighboring country that you know really well, South Sudan. They got their secession from Sudan. So now it's mainly a Christian country, different tribes, the size of France. But there is no tribal warfare going on there. Are you extremely disappointed that these groups were not able to work better together with each other? And did you expect this when we were all celebrating the sovereignty of this newest country in Africa in 2011? And where did we fail in making South Sudan into a success when it has ended in a different category?
It's not just South Sudan. Uganda was like that. Uganda had a lot of problems because of some groups emphasizing identity. We had a problem of Catholics versus Protestants. We had a problem of Christians versus Muslims. We had a problem of the tribes. It was not until we came in the 1960s with the student movement, which rejected this polarization. And we said, no, what are the interests of all these people? They want this, they want this, they want this. So we were able to show them that they have got a common interest. And that's how we were able to gain the upper hand in terms of thinking, to have a majority of the people looking at how will I get a job, where will I sell my products, to look at interests rather than identity. So Uganda was like that. It's not just South Sudan. What was the problem in Nigeria, Biafra? That was the problem. Even now, when you talk of Boko Haram, what is the problem? In Congo, the Katanga, the secession, and all that. So even Sudan, the problem was identity. First of all, race. People who say they are Arabs, and others Africans. Then Muslim, Christian. Now tribes, because identity goes on descending. You go from race, you go to religion, you go to tribe, you go to clan. If you say identity, there is no end. In the end, you end up with families. So that's why we must challenge the defective ideology of emphasizing identity. That must be challenged and banished, because that's where the problem is coming from. It's not just South Sudan, it is in many places. If you don't challenge it, it will be a problem.
Thank you. Susanna Moorhead, you're the chair of OECD DAC. This is really one of the foremost think tanks when it comes to development. What does it take to move from being poor